Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Thank you very much for watching this channel, and do please like and subscribe. And also there's a link down there to my book, which is on Amazon, 3 of them, and also they've been recorded in audio books, so you can get them on Audible. Anyway, I'm going to talk today about gang violence in the prisons, specifically in a prison near London called HMP Isis, which is located at Thamesmead, which is on the banks of virtually on the banks of the River Thames, near Greenwich, and it was opened in, I believe it was 2010. It is a young offenders institution for male inmates from the age of 18 upwards, usually to 21 when they're relocated into the main prison system. But it's got a population of approximately 600, maybe a little more, slightly overcrowded, no doubt. But there is a big kick-up at the moment, and there has been since 2012, when the then Governor, Mr. Hawkins, I believe his name was, reported that there was a big issue in the jail with gang violence, and there still is today. Apparently people who are in, drug-related gangs out on the streets dealing and generally misbehaving, when they come into the prison, they find that the people that they were associating with in the gangs on the out are in there on the inside of the prison, and so they form themselves into little self-protection gangs or exploitative gangs, whatever they may be, and continue in their criminality, having drugs smuggled in, no doubt, by various means. I've previously requested on here anybody who's been in prison and has information that they'd like to share anonymously with me on how drugs get into the prison, please do leave comments below. I invite anybody to leave a comment below. It really helps, and discuss the matters that are here, because they are pertinent to the prison system, which is what we're dealing with here on Tales from the Jails. Now, it's been reported, I believe that the national press have been onto this, and the BBC, interviewing inmates who have recently been released from HMP Isis. And it's named HMP Isis because Isis is an alternative name, or probably the original name, for the River Thames. So that's why it's called HMP Isis. But people who have been interviewed are saying that the gangs inside the prison are actually arming themselves with cell-made shanks. One of the favourite methods is to get razor blades and heat them up and melt them into toothbrushes or whatever other plastic instrument they can, forming a blade that can then be used to slash or stab other inmates. Numerous prisoners have reported that it's dangerous there and they don't feel safe, which is why they're getting themselves involved with gangs that are of a similar ilk to themselves. But as I said, people who are on the out in a gang come in and find that the gang is still operating inside the prison, albeit behind bars. Now, HMP Isis was originally built within the outer perimeter of Belmarsh Prison. People have been asked, how do these young offenders end up in prison? And one theory is that they have no viable role model males in their life. Single parent mothers trying to bring them up in today's society where drugs are apparently readily available. Never tried any myself. Tried a few Jack Daniels, and that seems to be the extent of it. I can't drink in the week though, only at weekend. My wife won't let me. Anyway, but they are doing drugs inside, spice, crack, cocaine, heroin, you name it. Apparently it's available, perhaps more available inside than on the out. I mentioned this the other day. In Strange Ways, they say it's easier to get drugs on the landings of Strange Ways than it is to get drugs on Deansgate in Manchester, which is the main road through the middle of Manchester. And so ISIS is suffering from extreme violence. There's been over 1,000 attacks on inmates and staff in the last 12 months. That's ridiculous. Something is seriously going amiss. And the problem, I realise that the 70s and 80s regimes at jails like the Scrubs and Strange Ways and Armley Jail, Wandsworth, etc., were highly criticised for their overt aggression by staff. But what the staff were doing was effectively keeping the prison safe, because inmates who decided that they were going to offend and exploit, abuse, attack other inmates were quickly dealt with by the prison staff, who at the time were 100% male, and many of them had been ex-army and were fit, relatively strong men. But we don't have that today. We have what I call the hostess system, and they are not physically equipped to go in and snatch a couple of battling gang members up and bodily lift them off the floor and run them down to the segregation unit. They can't do it. And the inmates know this. So they're basically doing what they damn well please. And the reports coming out of HMP Isis are that not only are inmates afraid, so are the staff. Believe me, if I thought that I was afraid going into the prisons, I wouldn't go in. But Strange Ways, that other ilk of jails, they had the answer, and it was the block, and of course the heavy duty staff. Right, so that's it. HMP Isis, riddled with gangs, drugs and violence, an exceedingly dangerous place to be. And listen, I believe it's run by the Home Office, by the way, through the prison service. It's not a private prison. I believe that it is incumbent upon the Home Office to have a health and safety examination of the prison, and if it's unsafe for staff and for the inmates, condemn it. They need to sit down and decide how they're going to deal with the problem, and at the moment they don't know. It's that time of day, folks. That's the song dinger, by the way. The famous song dinger. I found it. Yeah, and I'm going to sing to you. You deserve this. Really you do. And if you enjoy it, I'll see you on the sick parade tomorrow morning. This is an Irish song, actually. I quite like Irish songs, you know, the old Clancy Brothers and the Dubliners and all that. This is the Irish Rover. On the 4th of July 1806, we set sail from the sweet port of Cork. We were sailing away with a cargo of bricks for the Grand City Hall in New York. 'Twas a wonderful craft, she was rigged fore and aft, and ho, the wild wind drove her. She stood several blasts, she had 27 masts, and they called her the Irish Rover. We had 1 million bags of the best Sligo rags. We had 2 million barrels of bones. We had 3 million bales of old nanny goats' tails. How about that then? We had 4 million barrels of stone. We had 5 million dogs, 6 million hogs, 7 million barrels of porter. We had 8 million hides of old blind horses' eyes in the hold of the Irish Rover. There was Mickey O'Coot, who played hard on his flute when the lads laid it up for the set. He would tootle with skill for each sparkling quadrille till the dancers were fluttered and bet. With his smart witty talk he was cock of the walk, and he rolled the dames over. They all knew at a glance when he took up his stance that he sailed on the Irish Rover. There was Barney McGee from the banks of the Lee. There was Hogan from County Tyrone. There was Johnny McGurk, who was scared stiff of work, and a man from Westmeath called Malone. There was Slugger O'Toole, who was drunk as a rule, and Fighting Bill Tracy from Dover, and your man Mick McCann from the banks of the Bann was the skipper of the Irish Rover. For a sailor, it's always a bother in life. It's so lonesome by night and by day that he longs for the shore and a pretty young whore who'll melt all his troubles away. All the noise and the rout, swilling, pointing stout, for him soon is done and over. Of the love of a maid he is never afraid, an old salt from the Irish Rover. We had sailed 7 years when the measles broke out, and the ship lost its way in the fog, and the whole of the crew was reduced down to 2, just myself and the captain's old dog. Then the ship struck a rock, oh Lord, what a shock, tumbled and turned right over, turned 9 times around, and the poor old dog was drowned. That's the last of the Irish Rover. There you go. The Irish Rover. I sincerely hope that you liked that. And if you did, I've got a syringe full of the liquid kosh just waiting for your backside to appear on the sick parade tomorrow morning. Tales from the Jails.